on this subject. We've got another event coming up in March with BBC World Service entitled Digital Natives, which might also be of interest to you. So I'll hand you over to Richard.
Hello, my name is Richard Pendry. I want to thank you all for coming. You're all very busy people, and I know that there are many other things that you could be doing. Let me say a few words about myself. I was a member of Frontline News Television, which was the agency for freelancers which inspired this club. I teach journalism now at the University of Kent, which is the top-rated NCTJ course in the UK. I make programs, so I'm doing one for Al Jazeera at the moment about a FTSE 100 mining company which has poisoned a whole load of, which has had a role in poisoning a whole load of children in southern Kazakhstan, and it's on People in Power at Al Jazeera on the 12th of February at 1900 GMT. So please watch it. So that's the end of the plug. We are welcoming here tonight 4 people that we've described as non-traditional reporters. They help news organisations tell stories where conventional journalism fails. On my left, Elliot Higgins, who blogs about weapons in Syria under the name Brown Moses. Malachy Brown from Storyful, which is the online news agency. Trishar Barot, who works for the BBC's user-generated content hub. And on my right, Greg, which is not Greg is not his real name, and I think it's a first for all of us that Frontline has an anonymous panellist who is here undercover. So Greg works for an outfit called Videri, and he helps networks of human rights activists film secretly in dangerous places. Traditional news gathering is in retreat. Over the past few months, we've had people like Manny and Anthony Lloyd coming on stage here saying that they will not now go to Syria because it's too dangerous. Yet, for all the seeming impossibility of reporting Syria, a lot of news gathering is being done on that conflict, and it is happening online. We'll be showing you some of that. We'll be showing you how some of our panel verify videos on YouTube. We'll look at crowdsourcing, viral videos, and how to clear the rights on these videos for payment and use. We'll also see how the likes of Google and Rupert Murdoch's News Corporation are getting in on the action. So we promised to protect the security of Greg on my right. So he, as I say, he works undercover. If you're watching this online, I hope you won't see him in the video feed because he's cropped out of it on one side. Also, for Greg's benefit, can you please not take any photographs or videos during the event? Is that okay? Right, I will take that as a yes. Thank you very much. Right, the event will go as follows. We'll hear from each person a little bit about what they do. We'll see some examples of their work. There'll be 45 minutes in the middle during which we want you to put questions, as many as possible, to our panelists, and we will answer as many as possible, and we'll spend the last 10 minutes looking at what our panelists think the future holds for them. The event will finish at 8:35, seeing as how we're 5 minutes late. First of all, I'd like to get a sense of who's in the room. So can you please put your hands up? Who in the audience has worked in news gathering or is working in news gathering in some shape or form? Great, thank you very much. Please feel free to put your hand up more than once. Who has had something to do with reporting areas of conflict? Okay, lots of people. And finally, who is writing or tweeting or sharing online about this area in a professional capacity? James Harkin, is he in the room? Okay, right. Okay, great, thank you. Firstly, I want to go around quickly and ask each of our people in no more than a minute each whether they think of themselves as non-traditional reporters. Elliot, do you think of yourself as a non-traditional reporter?
I mean, when I started the blog, I wasn't thinking I'll be a reporter, I'll be a journalist. I was just doing something I was interested in doing. But as time went on, I wanted to get the information I was writing, out there. So I started accepting, offers to write articles, unpaid, I should add. And that's how I get the information out there. But then I started thinking about, what techniques am I using? What can I demonstrate to other people? So in a way, I was kind of trying to educate other people how to do it as well. I was trying to work with this vast amount of information and turn it into something useful. The one thing I came across a lot is people were producing this information, but no one was taking any notice of it because I think they were making it too hard to be accessible for journalists. So I started thinking, right, how can I make this easy? So I assumed journalists were either too busy or too lazy to be able to do the work themselves, to investigate it, to fact check stuff. So I basically was trying to create stuff that was, neatly packaged with a nice little bow with all the sources and information. And I think that kind of helped me break out of, what is quite often just a kind of insular little community discussing these things.
Right, so that's how you made yourself useful.
Yeah, I sort of just did all the work I could on the subject and just gave it to people free.
Yeah. And Maliki from Storyful, what do you think of yourself as a non-traditional reporter?
I think that the source of information that we receive is a few years ago would have been considered non-traditional. It's primarily social media content that we work with and information. But I think more and more there's an acceptance now that is part of reporting. I think the work that we do is traditional reporting. I think it's just a different source of information. If you think about traditionally picking up a phone and calling a source and trying to get information and verify that, there's a lot more information that's available now online that allows you to corroborate and verify. And it's the application of traditional news values and news journalism values to a new form of information. So I think absolutely it is traditional.
Yeah. Okay. And Trusha, how do you get on with the rest of the BBC, and what do they think of you?
I've never really thought of myself as a non-traditional journalist, although I'm very aware that other people have probably seen me that way in BBC News. And over the years, I think me and my team have probably been treated with a mixture of suspicion, anger, but also sort of bewilderment and envy.
Why envy?
And I guess partly because they sort of see this little team originally in those days sort of tucked away on the 7th floor corner of television centre, well away from the main newsroom, playing around with interesting gadgets and technology and services that didn't really have any relevance to journalism as they saw it. But it's a very different way that we're perceived today. So whilst I don't think my perception of myself has changed in any way, I think others, their perception has changed towards us quite considerably. So whereas before we were just that team that played around with this weird thing called Twitter that no one understood, it's now just such a all-pervasive sort of part of everyone's working sort of day now, that it's just considered as just a normal way of working, I think. And so there's certainly a much greater understanding of what we do. But I also think that we need to make sure that we continue to keep looking over the horizon in terms of what's next, what are the new technologies or services that are out there, and make sure that we continue to keep being on the front line of testing them and sort of figuring out what they do, how they might be useful in our journalism, and then making sure the rest of the BBC newsroom and all the other BBC journalists get to use them as well.
Sure. And Greg, what do you think? How do you relate your work to traditional news gathering?
So first of all, I'm not a reporter myself, but the people that we work with, I think, are doing two important jobs. First of all, they are bringing information from many places that others, even if they have a very good will to bring information from, they cannot because of security issues. And I think that in the projects that are undercover or even those that are exposed, we create a bridge between the new types of journalism, citizen journalism, and the media, by us bringing the footage from one place to another and delivering it in a way that it can be showed, exposed, and used into the world.
Yeah. And we will. And you're going to show us a version of footage that ended up on national organisations, news organisations. Okay, great. Right. So Elliot Higgins. Right, you're sometimes portrayed by online as an unemployed young father with some IT skills who, with no training in journalism, who somehow made himself into a weapons expert. You got interested in the weapons that you were seeing in the conflict in Libya. And then you took that interest in weapons and videos and video verification to a new level with the Syrian conflict. But it was a collaboration with the New York Times and Chris Chivers of the New York Times that made your reputation. Could you talk a bit about that, please?
Yeah, so in early 2013, I've been doing the blog since March 2012, so I'd basically spent the last 9 months looking at every video I could find from Syria. I sort of ended up focusing on weapons more, sort of randomly more than anything, just because the first big blog post I did was looking at what weapons the opposition had, because no one else had done it. So after 9 months, I'd seen every weapon that was in the conflict. I knew what to expect, and then at the start of 2013 I started seeing new weapons that were a very unusual type of weapon, and it was 4 different kinds of weapons. I didn't recognise them, so I did research into them. I found out they all had links to one country, which was Croatia. I did a serious blog post saying, they're appearing in the south of the country. They appear with groups that belong to the Free Syrian Army, not jihadist groups or independent groups. They're starting to spread throughout the country. So I did a series of blog posts at the start of the year, and I had an open invitation from the New York Times to write for the At War blog. So I basically put together a kind of summary and sent it through to them and said, do you think this is interesting? And Chris Chivers came back to me and said, this is very interesting. We want to take your work and see what we can do with it. So they took all this information I had. So I had videos of the weapons, I had maps of where they were appearing, what kind of weapons they were. They took that then to their contacts in governments and various agencies, and because of this information I had gathered, people at these agencies said, these are Croatian weapons that have been purchased by Saudi Arabia, flown to Jordan, and then smuggled across the border.
So this is ex-Soviet weaponry that was bought in Croatia that ended up in Syria?
Yeah, it was a mix of weaponry, but it was all linked to Croatia, and they basically sort of said it was a fair cop and admitted to it. So they managed to verify each element of the story with 2 or 3 different sources. So what they actually published was a really good front page story saying this is a smuggling route by Saudi Arabia involving the Croatian government and the government of Jordan into the south of Syria for the Free Syrian Army. And it was really the first really good proof that these weapons were being smuggled into the country, because there's always been suspicions, but there'd never been such a clear example. The funny thing about that is this only came about because they posted videos on YouTube of them using the weapons. This was supposed to be top secret, yet the Free Syrian Army couldn't help but post these videos online. They even had one video which was really was interesting, was they had a classroom full of fighters with the weapons on the tables in front of them and a blackboard with drawings of tanks and diagrams saying this is how you use the weapons, which is something I'd never seen in Syria before, and it was a clear indication that this was out of the unusual.
Right. So the idea, this is a collaboration between very old media and new media. That was. Yeah,
I mean it's a new source of information that at the time wasn't really being used by many people, but it was as clear as day when you were looking at the actual evidence. I mean, it was part of my process every day. I had a list of about 400 YouTube channels, and I would check every channel every day, and these were all belonging to various armed groups in Syria, so they were all original uploads, and they just started appearing, and then I just did the math really and figured it out.
Right, and Chris Chivers' support and the New York Times support was important for you, wasn't it, in establishing your reputation?
Yeah, so after that I then was interviewed by The Guardian, and then basically I sort of did a fundraiser where I raised enough money to do the blog full time for the rest of this year, and then I just kept on going, and then there was the August 21st attack, and that was a big time for me because I wrote a lot about that, because there was a huge amount of information on open source information from social media on that, and now I'm here.
Yeah. Would you I know that everybody would really like to see how you verify videos, and it's kind of like a magic trick, and so would you like to show them what you do just very quickly?
Okay, I've got a couple of examples from Libya, which were they're really simple examples, and they use nothing more than a YouTube video and Google Maps. So this was from August 15th. Let's open this up. So this was the Syrian Libyan rebels came in there to capture the town. So I wanted to confirm it. So this is the video they posted online. So they're in, you can see the road. You can see a tank driving down the road. So if a tank can drive down, it's pretty wide. There's a mosque, and there's not much information there, you would think, but we know certain things from this video. So let's pause that. So we've got the mosque here. It's quite a distinct looking mosque as well. So that's a good landmark. So we want to try and find that mosque. We can also see from the picture that this road's quite wide. So we're looking for a mosque next to a very wide road, which is two small pieces of information. But the town isn't that big, and you can see from this map there's a main road that runs through it. So immediately we've got something to look at. So you zoom in and you can see, okay, that's a pretty big road. You can see the cars. It's maybe each lane is about 3 cars wide. So those tanks, more than enough room for a tank to drive down it. So you look along that road. You think, where's the mosque? So we come across the mosque, which you can see here. And now if you look at the picture of the mosque, we can see the dome, we can see the minaret, we can see how there's this sort of right angle in the shape of the building. So if you go back to the picture, you can see the dome, you can see the minaret on the south, on the road side, which is important because that's what we can see in the video. You can also, you might not be able to make it out from here, but there's the angle just where the minaret meets the building. And then there's also you can see the wall and you can see the road by the side of it. So you can also see the outer wall. You can see where the road curves in. And if you watch that video, you can start seeing the other elements. So you would play through it and you can see the buildings around it. So by just using Google Maps and that one video, you can get a good sense of yes, this is where they say it is. Another example that uses something a little bit of a more a different technique. Again, is from Libya, and this time. Slide the video. So this is in Brega, and if you know Libya, you know Brega was it was a front line, and there's constant claims about someone capturing this and someone capturing that. So this is where the Libyan opposition claimed to have captured Brega, and they posted on saying we've captured Brega, but obviously Brega's a big place. So in this video, this guy's walking around, and you're in a pretty nondescript place. So he's showing what roads are there, all these short buildings. And this video's about 3 minutes long, and it's just like this. There's no distinct buildings. He's just walking around these streets, showing you what it looks like. So you would think there's actually not that much to go on, but there is one thing that you can actually work off. So. There's basically 3 main residential districts. There's this one which is clearly apartment buildings and looks nothing like what's in the video, so we can ignore that. There's this one which is lots of low buildings, densely packed, and again there's a place like this here, low buildings, densely packed. So what I did, I watched the video and I thought, what do I have in the video? Well, I can see the roads, I can see where he's walking around, he's walking through these streets. So I made a very basic map of basically the streets he could see and what I could see in the video. So then I kind of used that like a fingerprint and started comparing that to the different locations. So there's the 2 areas I was talking about before. This first area, the roads are very straight, they're all at right angles. That wasn't what I was seeing in the video. In the second one, they're all curvy. And this is what we have. So eventually I found this area. So if you just have a look at this and then the pattern here, you can see there's an actual, it matches. It's basically like a key to a lock. And then when you watch through the videos again, you can actually see the different pieces of what's there. You can see the buildings, and if you're watching a video and you say, okay, I know according to the map he should be at this location. So for example, towards the end of the video he stands about here and he looks in this direction. You can see there's an empty space here, there's 2 small structures there, so you'd expect to see that on the video. And if you look on the video, this is the same frame, so you've got a big empty space, walls either side, and then garages at the end at that sort of angle that you can also see here if you're wearing glasses. So that's 2 very simple examples of how you can do it.
I think should we? I wanted you to talk about the gas attacks and the munitions and all the work you've done in that. Maybe we can do that in the questions perhaps later.
Sure.
Because I'm conscious that we need to talk to the other panellists as well. Malachy, so Storyful. You're based in Ireland. You've just been bought by News Corporation. Rupert Murdoch spent $25 million, I believe, on you. So
A snip.
And you have, which is obviously very good Christmas present for all of you that had shares in the company. You run a thing called Open Newsroom. Can you talk a bit about that? What is your Open Newsroom?
Yeah, Open Newsroom is it's a community on Google Plus where journalists, human rights workers, experts like Elliot, collaborate around breaking news events. We post information that's emerging on social media. We ask questions about it. We vet it fairly rigorously, I would say, and it's all done in an open and collaborative way. The membership of it is moderated. There are several hundred members at this stage. I think less than 1,000, but approaching 1,000. But it's open to the public to monitor the input there. And a couple of recent examples of that in action were videos from Syria, again, of a chopper being downed in a place called Daria to the southwest of Damascus, which has been pounded by barrel bombs by the regime of late, and the rebels took great delight when a chopper was struck by a missile and downed. And there were several videos from suburbs around Daria and in Daria itself, and this speaks to the number of video activists that are out there in Syria documenting what's happening there every day. I mean, there were about 6 or 7 videos of people who had their cameras trained on this chopper as it went down, and it couldn't have been coordinated from all of these different suburbs. And we were able through that to map the locations of all of these people. There were dark backgrounds in some of the videos, and we calculated that from their different angles they had a glare in the sun, and we could see in one that was in Daria itself that there was a haze in the background, and that would account for the different shades in the backgrounds. And you could see the movement of the chopper and the points when debris was coming off it, and the blades were coming off it, and activists on the ground then filming where the blades had landed. And so you had a number of different people adding their input to that to verify that this was a legitimate event. I think you had sources from Daria, is that right? Oh no, that was a separate incident actually. Yeah. There was allegations of another poison gas attack, and we had Peter Brookhart from Human Rights Watch pitching in information about what the effects would show, and that some of the effects were showing here but not all. And also all of the people in the video were clearly from a particular side of the conflict, in fatigues, wearing fatigues. And you had information from activists in Daria as to what happened, and so there were suspicions around that allegation, and so I think it was very quickly decided that extreme caution needed to be exercised in relation to these claims. Other pictures and videos that are put in there recently, somebody from the Syria Reddit team posted a picture of a child lying between two stone graves. I think some of you may have seen that in the last couple of weeks, which was a piece of art, and that was very quickly again established through collaboration in an open way.
Yeah. Could you talk a bit about the coders and the programming people that you work with, and the apps and that you're developing?
Certainly. So Storyful was founded on the idea that you could draw news from the noise of social media, and any of you who have heard any of us speak about that will know what we're talking about. And what in the last few years, what we've really done is developed. We filtered the social web in such a way that we're able to monitor it very effectively, and it excludes all the noise, and it takes in all of the quality information from quality sources. And if you consider any breaking news event, if God forbid something were to happen here, people as they're running out the door will be tweeting about it. A conversation emerges around it, and although initially the details of that might be misleading, it's pointing you to something important that is worth checking out. And we've built intelligent systems, lists and so forth, that allow us to monitor cities, states. We've got over 600 lists, and then we've built technology that monitors that for us. And if there's a change in the nature of the list, be it the words that are shared, the people who are influencers in that list that tweet, the velocity of it, it all signals that something has changed in it. It gives us a shot in the arm to say, okay, go check that out. And then we've built other technology then that uses that intelligence. You're getting, be it in Arabic or in Pashto, you're getting local language terms describing an event or a place, and we can take that and we bring stories to visual by searching across platforms like Instagram, Vimeo, YouTube, Facebook, Vine, you name it, and we have a tool that does that for us, and we can do it on a location basis as well. So we can we can suck out any content that's geolocated, and so that gives us a head up on verifying the information as well. And so that's where our team of journalists step in. Is in creating the queries that surface this content, but in applying the verification techniques that Elliot just outlined to that information, and then reaching out to the owners of that content and establishing what the rights are, if they want to license it, how they want it cleared, do they want to be credited or do they want to remain anonymous, and that sort of information. So
could you give me an idea how much money you can make by selling by licensing to you through you guys?
It varies, but I mean, it can be thousands. I mean, people have earned over 10,000 on a video from this is probably not newsworthy, but a guy tried to grope Beyonce at a concert, and he was ejected by the security, and she insisted that he be let back in. Somebody had that on camera, and of course there was, as a kicker, there was great interest in that piece of video.
Did anybody ever license Emotional Baby?
Yes, we licensed Emotional Baby.
How much did that person earn?
I can't remember.
We got Emotional Baby on your.
I don't actually know, but
has everybody who's seen Emotional Baby? The one that the baby that's listening to the mother singing. It must be. It can't be. Is it just the two of us? No, I don't believe it. You've seen it.
But I can give you an example of how we find people and track them down, if you like.
Yeah, you do it really quick.
Video here very quickly. How do I minimize this?
Just need to.
Yeah. There we go. I think I'll probably start from the beginning. So this video, many of you will have seen. It is the Boston Marathon, and hundreds of millions of people, if not billions of people, have seen this video, and a lot of people, a lot of news organizations just ran with it. We spoke to, I think we were the first news organization to speak to the person who owned that content. Very, very easy to verify the location. You just get Google Street View of Boylston Street running towards the finish line, and that's where she was. And we were on that story at this stage very quickly. And here's a picture posted by a journalist that we know in Boston, who's on our Boston list of the moment of the explosion. And in fact, when you compare the video to this photograph, you can see some of the same athletes. So that the time is verified there. The video was posted. It's the only video posted to. Excuse me. That's not great. I hope there's no wires down there.
Yeah, there's loads of wires.
An obscure, YouTube account called Nico Angel Wolf. No personal details, so very difficult to establish if they own the video, and they just describe it as a marathoner's point of view. But by taking the video code and searching Twitter for that, we found an affiliated account, Night Nico. Well, we didn't know it was affiliated, but the name suggests that it is, and the person describes it as my mother's point of view. Okay, so it sounds like they're related. Now, these are no personal details on Twitter again, but a very distinct username. So searching Google, we found a Pinterest account for Nico Angel again, or Night Nico 3, and this time we found a linked Facebook account and a surname, Tracy. So you can see the same rabbit ears there on the Facebook pictures of this person, and we established that it's a teenager named Morgan Tracy uploading from Ballston Spa in New York. So the likelihood is that Morgan's mother was running in the marathon, and we had reached out to Morgan for her parents' details. Obviously, you want to get the clearance of parents if you're dealing with children, and we didn't get a reply. But undeterred, we checked the Boston Marathon website for Tracy. There was one hit for Jennifer Tracy in her late 40s from New York. We could see that she crossed the 40k mark but didn't cross the finish line. She crossed about 10 minutes before the bomb went off, and she was averaging about 10 minutes a mile at that stage. So it's, this is the person. And then we found her on LinkedIn, and she's from Ballston Spa, where Morgan is uploading from on Facebook. And then we found her phone number on Spokio. And we also found her uncle, who was talking about her marathon exploits on Facebook, and said they're okay and they're on the way home. So we were able to pick up the phone, talk to her. She was okay for it to be used and credit accordingly, and let our clients know that that video could be used. And it's one of the most dramatic videos of the Boston Marathon bombing. And very quickly, I can go through some of the technology that I spoke about. This is what we call a alert bot, and so this monitors our lists for changes in the nature. And you can see that there's a bunch of lists here: Iraq, Alabama, Dominican Republic, all telling us that there's a change in the nature of our lists for those areas, and you get the words that are being changed. Here's a case study of a politician being assassinated in Tunisia, Mohammed Brahimi, high-profile politician, and just that alert alone, that technology gave us a heads up of over an hour on what you would call traditional wires reporting from that region. Same, an attack on the consulate in Benghazi, the Swedish consulate in Benghazi, and by the time people are alerting it, we're looking for visuals on that. And then here's what we call heat map, which again just monitors for words that people are sharing on Twitter, on the subset of Twitter that we have taken for ourselves as good sources. These refer to a judgment in the US Supreme Court on gay marriage, the death of a prominent author. I think the middle one there is the Microsoft CEO announcing he's going to retire next year. So when a conversation explodes around a topic, we get a heads up on that in a visual way. And then we take search terms, and this is a tool that allows us to enter a lot of search terms and build queries. And this is the Mandela funeral. And you get a really rich stream of content from across all platforms. You've got Instagram, Vimeo, YouTube, Facebook, all of them, and it just saves us a lot of time. It's a very efficient tool for us to build in real time a picture of what's happening on a particular story. This is the Perth bushfires this week, and you can see on the right hand side you've got endless amount of content, and so it's a matter then of applying your news judgment on what's valuable.
Malachi, thank you very much. It is a kind of magic, isn't it, for most of us? Tricia, I just wanted your team had an experience with the London riots, and suddenly BlackBerry Messenger became the thing. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so this is back in 2011 in the summer. So we at the time thought we were pretty good on social media, because that was sort of our job in terms of keeping across Facebook and Twitter and various other blogs and YouTube and so on. And we'd done a pretty good job in terms of the initial writing that had happened in terms of monitoring a lot of these platforms. But overnight, one of the things we really quickly discovered was that a lot of information was being shared either by writers themselves or other people who were witnesses to what was going on. It tended to be pretty young people, so in their teens to sort of early 20s. And there was a real amount of information that was being sent around in terms of messages, but also pictures, either people tipping people off where the cops had run away from the JD Sports and it's a free-for-all, go and take your Nike tops or whatever at this location, or sort of small communities of groups who were basically messaging each other to try and protect their communities. So I think there's a particular Turkish area in London that were using BlackBerry Messenger just to warn shopkeepers and other members of the community, and just giving them sort of real-time updates about what was going on. What was a challenge for us was, unlike these other sort of open sort of social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, where you can see this stuff that's being posted, BlackBerry Messenger was a completely closed platform, and you could only see this as a individual if you were the one who was receiving these messages, and if you didn't have access to that subset of people who were messaging each other, then you just wouldn't know what was going on, and that proved to be a real challenge. And thankfully,
for BBC reporters that were not robbers.
Yeah, but I think one of the things that we learned from that night was, I mean, there were a couple of journalists and also a couple of people on our team who had BlackBerry handsets, which is increasingly rare these days. but a few of them had started getting these sort of random messages that were being sent around to sort of mass groups, and had picked up on some of these messages, and so we're able to feed that back into the news desk. But one of the things we also discovered that particular night was that, as well as just being a source of pictures and videos and eyewitness accounts, we were feeding in real-time intelligence in terms of our news desk's deployment plans. And so, the news desk had a number of BBC journalists across different parts of London, but they were very much sort of reactive in terms of they were picking up reports of violence and so on from the agencies and so on, and then redirecting correspondence or satellite trucks or radio cars to those locations or near those locations where it was safe to do so. But what we were able to do with access to BBM, but also just monitoring, I guess, Twitter in particular that night in a way that we hadn't really done before, which was trying to, in a way that I guess Maliki showed that sort of heat map, trying to almost use these sorts of platforms as a way of trying to anticipate or predict where the worst hotspots are going to be. And that proved to be a real sort of eye-opener for us. And I think technology has changed quite a lot since then, that has made, if an event like that happens again, I think we're in a much better position now. And a lot of that's to do with geolocation technology. Again, Elliot and Maliki talked a little bit about this, where in those days we just didn't have the means to be able to figure out whether someone who's posted a tweet or a picture or a video is definitively from that location or not, other than what you can just see with your own eyes or based on what they're saying. But now there are a lot of technologies out there that actually detect the sort of geolocation signature of that piece of content. And very similar to what Maliki was saying with the Boston Marathon, we had just, I think a few months before, began trialling this tool called Geophedia, which is one of several companies now that specialize in sourcing social media content based on geographic location. So you can just type in a location or a landmark, and it will do sort of a perimeter search of that location and return any social media content that's been tagged with that location, in terms of a picture or a tweet or a bit of text or a video. And so we...
Is it easy to use? I mean,
it's
for the rest of us.
Yeah, and actually I should have brought a little slide just to show you, but it's basically just a sort of very much like a Google map. You just type in a location and it will just take you to that location, and then it will show you sort of pinning sort of different content that's in that location. So whether it's a Flickr image or a YouTube video or a tweet or whatever. With the Boston Marathon, it was a really good story in many ways to test out that geolocation technology, because we knew what the location was. We knew that that there was an incident at the finishing line of the marathon. We knew what the route was. We knew exactly what street we were looking for, and so we did a very quick sort of perimeter search of that street. And instantly we were getting these sort of first images on Instagram and Twitter, and some of the similar videos to the one that Maliki brought up, that were popping up very, very quickly. And because we knew that they had been posted from those locations, that in many ways helped us to accelerate that sort of verification process, because that element of doubt in terms of whether it's actually their picture or if they're just reposting someone else's image, that sort of helped us skip that step and get to the original user quicker. And we've found that this sort of technology, whilst it's still very much mostly Western world, developed world usage in terms of, it doesn't really work in Syria or parts of Africa or large parts of Asia, just because people's mobile phone technology isn't quite there compared to the types of mobile phone sets that people had at the finishing line at the Boston Marathon. But I think that's one of the things that's definitely going to be a big change over the next 18 months, as mobile phone technology just becomes so much more ubiquitous in the developing world, and even feature sets or cheap smartphones are now becoming much more used and at a price point that even poor people can afford. And I think we're going to see a sort of an exponential growth in geolocation-based technology and social media content that will have a really big impact in the way we do our news gathering.
Okay, great. And I was going to ask you, how does the BBC manage the reporters' use of social media?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. I remember 3-4 years ago when I first started helping out with shaping the BBC social media strategy, and we were thinking, can we find any reporter who would be willing to start a Twitter account?
Right.
And can we find someone
about 4 years ago.
This is about 4 years ago, and just finding a reporter who would take Twitter seriously as a journalistic tool wasn't easy. And in those days we had to go through all sorts of editorial boards and write papers and go through committees just to justify the reason why the BBC News would even be on Twitter. So a lot's changed in those 4 years, and now we have hundreds of reporters and journalists and producers who are on Twitter in an official capacity, unofficial capacity, or a mixture of the two. I think one of the things we initially started doing was we had quite a clear sort of definition between what's an official account and what's an unofficial account, and that if it's an official account, it's an account that will have sort of a senior editor who is overseeing it and not sort of approving every tweet before it goes out, but certainly sort of second checking it as soon as it goes out, so that there is that same sort of level of editorial consistency as you would expect for any other form of BBC journalism. And it would have all the right branding, and they'd be very limited in their scope of what they can tweet about, and it would only be about their job, and it wouldn't be about their dogs and cats or family and things like that, or the football team that they support. I think that boundary is not quite as strong as it was, and I think now, and I think it's a very good thing that BBC journalists are allowed to show a lot more of their personality in their Twitter accounts, and I think one of the great benefits of that, it's allowed their followers and their potential audience to engage with them a lot more and share with them a lot more information, because they see a sort of a human being rather than some robot that's just tweeting out a basic news line, which in itself isn't hugely interesting. And I think one of the other things that has changed a lot is just the general awareness of the importance of what we say on Twitter. There have been so many examples where people have found out that
Can you give us an
tweeting,
example that we don't know about, or we haven't heard about?
No.
This is something
I'll give you sort of slightly. Well, actually, there is one example. Hopefully he won't mind me repeating it. But Robert Peston, who I think is one of my favourite BBC correspondents on Twitter, and he's a fantastic journalist on Twitter. But he had came up with a spot of bother during the royal wedding, where he tweeted a joke about the conjugal situation of the married couple post the wedding, and it was done in a quite jokey way, but there was quite a lot of concern amongst some of the editors in the newsroom at the time that actually should a serious BBC journalist be joking about how the royal couple will have or may not have sex later on that night. And it was deemed that this is not something that's appropriate. It could, cause reputational damage to the BBC, and lots of pointy-headed thinking going on and chin scratching. And then they thought the best thing to do is for Robert to delete his tweet, which he did. And then he subsequently tweeted an apology, saying apologies to anyone who was offended by my tweet.
And then it became an actual story.
And there's always this danger that becomes a story in itself. But I think in that situation, no one complained to Robert about his tweet or to the BBC about the tweet itself. There were complaints subsequently after the Daily Mail reported on it, and it's usually people who never saw the original tweet. But so I think we're just much more aware that everything you tweet is in public. I think there was for a long time, I don't think it's so much the case now, that people didn't realise that if you tweet something, it's not just a private thing, or you are broadcasting yourself, and no matter what the tone is, it can be stripped away, and you are left being judged on the actual words of your tweet, regardless of any other context. And so one of the I think the sort of big social media lessons that the BBC has gone through is just educating all of its staff. Whether they have a Twitter account that says all these views are my own and not my employer's, it makes no difference actually. Which is why quite recently I just took off that wording on my Twitter account, because even if
it may end up in the Daily Mail.
And so the Daily Mail won't care whether I say this isn't my employer's views or not. They'll say he's a BBC journalist and therefore fair game.
They won't. No. Let me turn now to Greg, because what you do, the way that you work, is actually completely the opposite to everybody else here that we've heard from. And so you work for your organisation is called Videre. So Videre est, what is your? It's
Videre
to see is to believe is the Latin,
Videre
isn't it?
credere.
Okay, so to see is to
Seeing
believe.
is believing, yes.
Yeah, and you were describing this strange life that you lead. So you were talking earlier on. We were talking about you go to the restaurant with your family, and you've got a bag full of phones, and you've got 9 phones in your bag, and every phone has your a different name and a different story and a different life with each phone. So depending on who phones, you've got to be these different people.
Yes.
So that must drive your family absolutely nuts.
First of all, yes.
Your wife, for example. she
Yeah,
must-
so it drives people crazy, people around me. But I think, first of all, it's a must. It's something that security for us is rules that we must not break, no matter what. So even for me coming to this event, I had to make.
It's a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah, we
the
had to
organisation.
think a lot about how we do it, because we knew that it's going to be streamed online and people will watch it and people will see it. Now, it's important first of all to understand that it's not only my life that I'm afraid or aware of, but it's mostly the people on the ground that sometimes I meet. We do not do anything wrong in any place, and but still some people might find that we are stepping on some toes in some places. So it's mostly for them and less for me. All this effort.
Can you give? I know you've got an example of your work, which
Yes.
is edited somewhat to, but we
Yeah.
want to show you something of what they do, but
Yes.
without revealing the countries
Yes.
where you work, because
Yes.
that's important to you as well.
Yes, yes. So we took out the sound. We took out any kind of detail that might explain or show where the footage was taken. Yeah.
Shall I pass this over?
It's the VLC file on the right side, down there.
Is the dock over on the right?
Yeah, on the dock. Yeah.
Oh, it's the bottom.
M4V, is it? Frontline Club
It's
M4V?
called Frontline Club, yeah, M4V. Yeah.
Should we just play it?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk us through what
Yeah.
we're seeing?
So what we see here is footage from illegal gold panning. If you can take the subtitle, the thing off. It's footage from illegal gold panning in some place in Africa. Now, what's important to understand about our work is that for us to be able to penetrate to places, so in some cases different from other citizen journalists that go to an event that is just happening and they are taking pictures. To go and film into a place like that, you have to penetrate and you have to take the time to be there. So our people spent months working there as gold panners and basically embedding themselves into the society and into the place for them to be able to take any kind of footage. Except of that, I think that you'll see through the footage that our people, through the training that they get from us, are able to tell a full story and not just taking one shot of something happening. But they understand what telling a story is and what kind of angles are needed from the story. So they will do interviews, they will film different things, they will come and continuously filming in a place till basically we feel that we have what we wanted to have in our hands. So it's a long process, it takes a lot of time that these people dedicate their lives into doing it.
And your Videre is a charity, so
Yes.
you don't sell your work, you don't
No.
earn any money from it.
No,
But
not
you-
only
but-
that, but we don't. So we published in the last years in more than 500 media outlets, more than 500 links, and we were never mentioned in Videre. So we don't take money, we don't get any credit. We ask not to get any credit anywhere. So probably you saw our footage as part of BBC or other places, but you never knew that it's us.
I know you've worked with Storyful,
Yes.
and they said they had a good experience with you. But
So do us.
I suppose the obvious question is, how does anybody know that any of this stuff is true? Because it completely depends. There's no transparency at all. So it completely depends on everybody trusting you
Yes.
and your people that you work for, and that work with you.
Yeah. So
How's that
it's
work?
a whole chain of verification process that we are part of this chain as well. So we are not the end point of something, but we urge everybody to double verify what we already verified. But yes, it takes time.
Have you ever made any mistakes?
No, we must not. We must not make mistakes. First
No,
of all,
I mean, all of us must not make mistakes.
of
But
course.
do you, have you ever made mistakes?
Till now, no. There was one time that we were close to do something about someone that we thought that is saying something, and then we looked closer and we zoomed very a lot into the footage, and we understand that the voice that we heard is not the person that we thought is saying it. But till now, there haven't been any mistakes. So sometimes it takes us months to release footage. And we still have a lot of things that we didn't release, so we will not release anything until we'll do a very deep checkup about what we have and what is the story that we are presenting or trying to pitch to media outlets or to lawyers, or because we don't work only with the media.
Are there any countries that you will not work in? Because I know you're reluctant to talk about the countries that you do work in. So what are the countries that you won't work in, and why?
Probably it will be harder to work in some of the East European countries. I think that so me personally and us as an organization, we take responsibility for the lives of the people who work with us. So in places where we think that what we do, we will not have enough security measurements for us to be able to protect those people from getting hurt or losing their lives, so we will not work in any kind of this place.
Which countries would those be?
You can start guessing now.
All right. Could you talk a bit about a bit more about how you work? About why are you doing this? What is your motivation for doing this? Because you're doing an awful lot you're not doing it for the glory or prizes or awards. You're not doing it for money. So why are you doing it?
Yeah. So first of all, to try to do good, but that's the simple answer and the most important answer. We are a group of people that come from different types of backgrounds, which have different types of skills that put together has led us into running this organization. About how we work, so whenever we will decide to start a project in a place, so we will do a very deep research about the place, and then we will start identifying potential partners of the work that we want to do there. We will approach them. Sometimes, most of the times, it will not be clear in the first meetings what and where we are aiming to. Later, after we decide that the partner is credible, and there is a huge component of trust that we have to build with people that we approach. So after that is built, we will train, equip, and run networks of people. And when I say running networks of people, it's not just a mistake that I had 9 phones. It happens 24 hours a day, so we know exactly each of few hundreds of people that we have around the world, where they exactly are on the map, what they are doing, what they are supposed to do, what their mission is, and when they left home and when they came back. So it's a hands-on, very tight kind of operational work. Yeah.
And you've done we need to do some. We need to take some questions, don't we, Millicent? Yeah. Could you please introduce yourselves? Give us your name and whatever organisation you work for, please, when you're asking questions. And please wait for the microphone because we're streaming on the internet and we want to be able to hear your question. Please.
Hi, Oz from Vice magazine. Nice to meet you finally, Elliot. I had a question regarding the recent, I saw it on the Washington Post article regarding the supposed difference in how far the Imlaka missiles could travel. I spoke to you about it on Twitter. I was wondering if you could give us a bit more light about the recent articles.
He's referring to an MIT report recently about the range of the, they're called volcano rockets that were used on August 21st for the sarin attack in Damascus. I know one of the authors and communicating quite frequently, so I don't want to say anything that's too outlandish. I do have some issues with that report, and there are criticisms with the way the intelligence was used by the US and other countries. And you look at some of the information they put out, and it does seem, looking at what we know now, that it's it's wrong, and you do have to ask why. But I think there's some issues with that report. They claim in the report that the rocket in the actual they basically, these volcano rockets, they're basically semi-improvised weapons. They reuse a rocket from a 122mm Grad rocket, and in the report they claim that it didn't extend into the warhead. And I've seen pictures where you can see the inside of the warhead, you can see the inside of the rocket, and it does look like it extends into there. So I would question that claim. They're saying that the nearest, in one report I read, they said the nearest government position was, I think, 3.7 miles away, but you can actually see from footage posted by the Syrian government that they were only 2 kilometers away, which is within range of what they were saying. I think there's issues with it. I think it's something that should be discussed rather than argued. But I think the range might be a bit longer than they say. And there's government positions 2 kilometres away from the furthest impact location, and probably even 1.5 kilometres away from the nearer impact locations. But I'm working on a project at the moment where I'm reviewing all the information to do with August 21st. A bit of help from Storyful and some other people. So hopefully in a month or two I might have a huge amount of information to actually put out there about that.
If that isn't detailed enough, then Elliot has more. So,
much more.
If someone else wants to ask a question, please.
Hi, my name is Leila Khodabakhshi. I'm from BBC Persian Service. My question is for Greg. Does media approach you to commission any kind of report or anything, or you just approach people?
Yes, so after there is a trust and proof, and there is a good relationship with a media outlet or a journalist, so the work can be done both ways. It's either us coming and approaching and saying, look, we've been working on this story for a long time, and sometimes, many times, they come to us and say, we are working on this issue and we are not able to get this kind of information, or to get it in a way that you can. So we do develop a lot of good collaborations with journalists and media outlets, yes.
Was there a hand at the back? Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Alexandra. I've got nothing to do with journalism. I'm just curious about the subject. And my question is, do you ever come across verifying some of the extremist threats as a videos coming in, such as, the recent, for example, Sochi Olympics threat that probably most of you watched already coming in? To be fair, watching it, they don't look particularly threatening, but there are no signs, and it seems like it can be taken in any room, anywhere. And even one of us can take the same video in the room back in our house. So first of all, how do you verify those videos, and if they're genuine threats from terrorism threats? And secondly, do you get any fake ones as well, and how do you verify those? Thank you.
Okay, do you know about this Sochi video? I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's very difficult to verify those type of videos with absolute certainty, unless you have contacts in a jihadi forum or something like that, and you can get your hands on the original video or something like that. For us, what we try to establish 3 things: the date, location, and the original source of the content. And the location, obviously Elliot has illustrated how you can do that. The date, there are other means of doing that, and there are some great tools out there like Topsy to try to find the earliest people reporting a particular incident. But something like that, it's quite obscure. It's very difficult to verify. accents, who the person is, if there's any features that that they display or any names that link them to other forums. I remember once for in a criminal justice scenario looking at a similar video, and we managed to track it back to a particular name of somebody who had posted it, and that happened to be an administrator of a jihadi forum in the Maghreb. Based on information from there, we thought that anybody could create a YouTube account with that name. So that's as far as we could get. We couldn't really verify it, but you just dig and see what you can try to uncover.
I mean, you've done tons of stuff on Lebanese accents and Hezbollah type people who may or may not be Hezbollah type people. Can you talk a bit about that? And you appeal to your Twitter followers for help, don't you, very often?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, I can think of actually one example. There was a video that was put online. It was on a brand new YouTube account, which is always a bit suspicious. But it actually showed someone claiming to be a Syrian opposition member, claiming to create chemical weapons and kill some rabbits with it. And it was quite an interesting video because obviously chemical weapons is always a big thing in Syria. But there was a lot about it that seemed off. For example, the name of the brigade he was talking about, no one had ever heard of it before. He had all these chemicals on the side, and lots of people started looking at the chemicals, and chemistry students saying, "What can you produce with this?" And you could produce chlorine gas, and which seemed to be what he used to kill the rabbits. But there was no way to verify this video was actually coming from a official opposition group because it was on a new YouTube channel, and usually these are posted on pre-existing YouTube channels that are used by these groups. So it seemed fairly suspicious. It was just one person. It looked like he was in maybe a university chemistry lab, and it just seemed off. It just didn't seem quite right. I mean, it was difficult to disprove, but also very difficult to prove it was genuine. And you find that quite a lot. Sometimes something's just not. Either way, it's difficult to prove if it's real or not, but some things are more suspicious than others.
Another question. Oh, lots of questions. Should we take three? Should we take 1, 2, 3? Please.
Stephen from Reuters. I've just got a question for you, Greg. Just wondering where the money for the charity comes from. Obviously, if you stay low key, that's going to affect the amount of funding you can raise.
Yes. So the funding from the charity comes from many different channels. Private people that give money, foundations, and few governments that we agree to take money from.
I'm Peace Murphy. I'm from ActionAid International, so we're a development charity that campaigns on issues increasingly where there is a threat or a danger. It could be around land grabs in Africa, it could be around sexual violence. What I'm very interested in is the geolocation technology that you were talking about earlier, because obviously it allows you to verify sources, but presumably the technology that's available to you is also available to security services everywhere. And I was just wondering about the risks to citizen journalism, like, what's in the metadata that comes out of smartphones or cameras in terms of GPS data and things like that. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the risks to citizen journalists.
Yeah, I think one of the things we've discovered...
You know about this as well, don't you? Yeah.
I think one of the things we've discovered over the last year is that the security agencies have been way ahead of us for quite a long time. So what we do with Geophidia is probably small potatoes as far as the security services are concerned. I think geolocation is a serious issue for a lot of people, though. I think increasingly a lot of these sort of social media platforms, they're pushing people by default to have their profiles to geolocation switched on. And almost with every iteration of these social media platforms, it makes it more and more difficult for people to realise what the actual security settings are. And I think one of the things we've discovered is that quite often when we've contacted people through these sorts of tools, they've been very surprised that their tweet or their picture or their video had some geolocation data on it when we explained to them how we found them so quickly. I think there are two ways of seeing how this may pan out in the future. I think people who are very aware of their own personal security do take a lot of precautions, and so these guys can all talk about what during the Arab Spring, and particularly countries like Syria, the people on the ground are pretty sophisticated now in terms of the types of preventative measures that they use in terms of telephones and mobiles and sat phones, and whether use Skype or more complex technology like VPNs and other things. And so for people who are quite tech savvy in security sort of hotspots, I think they're pretty good. For the more ordinary Joe sort of public scenario, one sort of potential path is that certainly a lot of these social media companies are pushing towards, is that actually there's nothing wrong with being open, and that privacy is a bit of an illusion in terms of why people have so many concerns about their privacy. And actually, if you're open about your data, then there are lots of benefits to you. And certainly this is a strategy that Google and Facebook are pushing a lot in terms of if you're open about who you are, what you do, and why you're doing it, then there are lots of other things that you can benefit from through our services. And so I think there'll be a bunch of people who will see the value and benefit of that, and will be, I think there's already evidence that the Generation Y, I think they're called now, they don't really understand the concept of privacy anymore, and why it's such an issue compared to maybe an older generation who are very sensitive to it. So those are just some of the issues in terms of how it's playing out, but I'm sure these guys can talk a bit about security.
So Greg, you've got a situation where this is all the information that you're stripping out of the stuff that you put out.
Yeah. So I want to add something a bit different. So we work in our mode of operandum. We have a balanced mix between high tech and low tech, and from one hand we will work with very sophisticated cameras. We build our own cameras. We have a very sophisticated data mining software that we work with. But from the other hand, we will never transfer, for example, footage to the internet. Everything is taken the old-fashioned way, by foot, from a place to another. So we will never receive from anybody something that someone sent us through the internet, just because the location is easy to identify, and it has to be a combination, and to understand when to use the technology and when to use the things that it enables you, and when using it puts you and other people in danger.
Can I just add one thing to that? Sorry. There's actually a piece of software that's being developed by the Guardian Project and Witness called InformaCam. What that does, it creates additional metadata when someone's filming something, but it actually encrypts all the metadata and then sends it to a secure server separately. So it's a more secure way of recording metadata, but also being able to use that metadata to confirm videos are actually accurate where they were filmed. It records GPS data, the direction of the camera. So I think anyone looking into that, I think it's worth having a look at InformaCam and seeing how that's being developed.
Okay, great. There was another question just at the back there, wasn't
My
there?
name is Julia Karma. I'm an editor for Sky News, and we work with Storyful, and I'm personally a big fan and a member of the Open Newsroom. And I have a question for Malachy, which is live feeds. Is that something you're looking at as well? That's one. And second, you develop all these contacts with people, and they can become useful to news organisations to put them on air and so on. Is there a way of that also becoming something, all this crowdsourcing of people, is that something that can be done? And a question for Elliot as well, kind of a personal one. What made you do it? And before, fame came, what made you spend hours looking at them? Was it just interesting weapons or...?
You're just a very curious person, aren't you?
So OCD is what it is.
All right, okay, OCD, right.
Live streams we keep an eye on Ustream and Bamboozer and the likes, depending on the situation, and depending on what we need to get out of it, I guess. But they haven't really been very widely adopted. But I think that's going to be one of the developments that we see in the coming years. And even with the introduction of Instagram video, we've seen it's an explosion in the amount of videos that are on Instagram now, and you can see. I remember monitoring the Ukraine riots recently when the riot police went into clear City Hall, and one person was over there. Actually, several people were over there on their Instagram accounts just filming the protesters hosing down the riot police in this freezing cold weather and forcing them back into a bus and to retreat. And then right across the other side of the square, somebody else is filming, reinforcements climbing over barricades to get into, and you get this real live sense of what's happening in the situation. When you can search it effectively using technology like that, and it's just a stream of content that's rolling down in front of your eyes. It's amazing to watch that, and I think that a couple of things on Instagram is just the user experience is so easy, it's so lightweight. This mobile ubiquity over there, and as Trushar says, as other regions come on, with cheap, affordable mobile connections, you're just going to see more and more of that. So Instagram is, and probably Vine as well, but Vine is so short, I think the news value is limited in those videos. Even 15 seconds on Instagram, there's a lot more value in that. So that's really narrowed the gap between live and what you would, I suppose, call post-hoc videos, like larger files that are later uploaded to YouTube or to Vimeo or something like that. So we use them, but probably not enough. Also, I think there are some issues with rights around live streams and certain platforms as well that need to be teased out, just the adoption on it, adoption of it, I think, rather in certain situations. Just a point as well about the ubiquity, like in India, apparently only a third of people who have smartphones actually use a 3G connection, which is quite something. The second question was contacts. We have a contacts database there. People don't use it all that much. Actually, our stats show they're interested more in the content rather than the contacts. We do put in contact details as long as people are happy for them to be included with our entries. So in our entries, you'll see the content, the script of what it is, our verification checks underneath it, and on the right hand side you get the contact details and the map and the geolocation information. But you're right. I mean, you could incorporate something like GRN Live into what we do, but it's not a focus of ours at the moment, and it's not used. Our Twitter lists are flush with contacts though. It's tons of them. And one client of ours that we have 24/7 access to our newsroom, and clients that have a particular level of access can request things, and France 24 make a lot of good use of contacts.
Did you feel you got an answer to your question about Elliot's motivation rather than his obsessive compulsive disorder?
I mean, it was really just, I'm just interested in current events, and obviously the Arab Spring was quite interesting. I was seeing lots of stuff posted on social media, Twitter, that was relevant, but no one was taking any notice of, so I just wanted to sort of make a record of that more than anything. It wasn't any desire to be a journalist, I just thought this is interesting, I'll put it in a blog, and it just built from there.
Questions? 1, 2, 3.
Hi, my name is Dominic. I'm working as a researcher. I've got a question for Elliot and Malachy in terms of speed. How long did it take you to figure out the location there in Brega and the Boston Marathon? How long did it take you to identify, first of all, the daughter and then the marathon runner herself?
The Brega thing took me about 20 minutes. I was just sort of coming up with the idea. I saw the video and I thought, what's in the video? And then I just drew it down, and then I realised, there's only these residential areas. It's quite a simple thing, really. So that was like literally just 20 minutes. I mean, it's a pretty simple technique, really.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but probably 10, 15 minutes or something like that. I remember doing it. Joe Galvin, who's a colleague of mine, is here in the audience, and we have a rolling Google Hangout all the time because we have journalists in Asia and US and here, and so we collaborate and we just kind of pitch ideas together. I think one person had found the link between the Pinterest and Facebook and the other accounts, and then somebody else suggested, have we checked that name on the register of athletes, and we just very quickly found the person.
Mine was actually a very similar question to that. Hi, Shauna. Freelance journalist. Mine's a very similar question to that on speed, but actually I'm interested in the BBC UGC for that, in that there's sometimes the accusation that BBC's slightly clunky and can be a bit slow, certainly when it comes to breaking things or being prepared to put things on air. Do you think that the UGC desk has sped up? Do you think you'll get faster? Do you think there's still red tape, really, for the UGC?
Yeah, I think what may look like being clunky externally, a lot of it internally is because we just want to be really sure that what we're broadcasting is what we really think it is. And there have been a lot of examples where I guess the success of the UGC team has often been preventing stuff getting on air as much as it has been getting stuff on air and getting it on quickly. I think as a team, our aim continues to be to get stuff first, verify it first, get it on air first. That will always remain our objective, just like any other competitive newsroom would. I think one of the things at the moment that sort of slows us down is just a sort of the legacy technology that we have inside the newsroom in terms of the different sort of systems and sort of mechanisms that we have that, we want to get a picture or a video into the system. There are, at least 3 or 4 different sort of hurdles you have to jump through before it actually gets to air. And so I think one of the things that I know the newsroom sort of technology team are working on is trying to just simplify that whole process. So, in a worst case scenario, it could sometimes take, up to half an hour to, once we've actually checked out and verified a video on YouTube, to actually get it on air. And that's, just really, really slow and unacceptable. And that's not so much a problem with our sort of journalistic processes, it's just the issue with the technology that we currently have to play with. I think that's going to change very soon, and that will certainly help us quite considerably. And I think it's the technology really that drives how quickly we can verify a lot of this stuff. Increasingly there'll be a lot more sophisticated tools and services that come along that will help us in many ways. Equally, there will be people who become more sophisticated in perpetuating fakes. And so the two will probably go parallel, and so sometimes it will become more complex to verify content for that very reason, as well as it being easier. And so it's a bit like saying how long's a piece of string going to be next year. It's about the same length as it is now.
You had a question?
Yeah, my name's Jill Swain. I run a magazine called Palestine News, which is very old media, and I was wondering what's the best advice that I could give to Palestinian activists and citizen journalists to get their, whatever they see, whatever they want to record out, what's the best technology to use?
Start that one.
So in terms of equipment and again technology, everything is doable. We have a workshop that we are able basically to build a camera that looks like any kind of thing that you can imagine. But I think that again, when you speak about giving equipment to activists, is more important the way that they use the equipment, because the equipment is there and the equipment is available. It's a lot about training, about security training, about understanding what they need to do and how it needs to be done, and that's many times the key question. But in terms of technology, I think that you need to understand exactly what you need to film or what you want to film to be filmed, and then everything is basically doable.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it seems like journalists are absolutely appalling at security, often, and that's something that you're very, very good at. Would any of you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'd echo
advice
that.
for your activists?
Yeah, just to establish what your focus is, establish what your tone is, and to promote yourself and to self-publish and to engage on social and build profiles. Be transparent about who you are. Safety, obviously, caveats included there, but safe means of contacting people and being available, building out networks, and just talking a lot in public about what they do, and then you're on the radar. I mean, we'd be interested in adding those people to our lists, for instance, and monitoring what they're reporting, and then the information that they're providing feeds into our technology, which picks up signals and all of that.
Yes. I can give you a short example. In one of our projects, we debated if to build a camera into coats of people's jackets. And then we didn't find a way of the camera for the specific country to be able to be taken out and in whenever a person finishes the film without it leaving any, any signs of something being there. And then we decided not to do it, just because even the families of the people that we work with, most of them do not know what we do. So the guy comes home, hangs the coat, and then the wife moves the coat and feels that there is something funny in the coat. So questions will start, rising. And so security has to be there all the way till the smallest details of everything done.
Could I just add one thing to that, which was, I guess it'd be useful to think from their perspective, what would a newsroom want to see in terms of evidence with regards to verification? How do we know that what they're filming or shooting is what it is as they're describing? And we noticed something very interesting in the early days of the Arab Spring uprisings, where we would often be going back to people or sources saying, you've uploaded this video or you shared this video. Where exactly is it? How can we be sure it is where it is? Or how can we be sure that this is a protest against Assad or a protest against something else, and so on? And then quite soon afterwards, we started seeing new types of videos emerging where you had people in the crowds with signs saying the date and the location, or people who are with the cameras, and I'm sure Elliot and Malik, you've noticed this, that when you see explosions that are happening in parts of Syria, for example, they're quite good at sort of commentating on what exactly they're seeing, where it is, and what they can hear, and so on. And I don't remember them being that sophisticated in those early days, and so it's almost like they've been educating themselves about how best to get their material out in the world and get it broadcast by understanding what the journalist requirements would be.
Or even a bomb goes off over here, and then next thing the camera pans all the way over there. Oh, there's the minaret, and then they go back again. And here I am.
Did you get something out of that you might be able to use? Okay, right. Questions? Yes, please. 1, 2.
Hi, Christian Benedict, Amnesty International. Maybe for the guy from the BBC, possibly. What are the trends and technologies maybe we need to be looking out for? Let's say in 3, 4, 5 years from now. This is moving so quickly. So what should we be looking at? Where's this going?
Well, anyone who can tell you what's going to happen in 4 or 5 years' time is either lying or delusional, because no one knows really. In terms of
the news gathering, though, the technologies and the trends.
I guess you can look at basic trends. I guess one of the big areas of change is the sort of thing we already talked about, which is the ubiquity of mobile coverage globally is going to grow exponentially. If you think that it's still just a couple of billion people out of 7 that really have access to a lot of mobile wireless technology, it's not it's quite possible that within 2-3 years you're looking at 5-6 billion people who will have access to the type of technology that not only allows it themselves to share their pictures and videos and messages to their friends, but to broadcast themselves, to become mobile news stations. Because even the sort of technology that currently still is quite clunky in terms of live broadcasting or live streaming or even having more polished broadcasts, that technology is going to be there inside a couple of years, and you will see independent news stations that may be banned by one individual that could be give likes of the BBC News a run for our money, and that's a real sort of, whether we see that as a threat or a challenge or an opportunity in working more collaboratively. I think these are challenges we'll have to look at. One big area I think within technology is also wearable technology, which is a sort of a bit of a personal interest of mine, just in terms of seeing where that could lead, where if you have in the future a Google Glass type of device that becomes fairly ubiquitous, then you basically have entire populations that can stream live onto the web in real time and broadcast live just by a blink of an eye, and that's how much technology could change. And so how do you figure out where news gathering fits into that process? It's just unlimited in terms of all the different permutations.
Okay, so it seems like we are talking about the future, and as we kind of move towards the end. Who was the other person that I was? Yeah, please.
Hi, Lisa, journalist for Dutch language newspapers. I have a question for you. you say the security of the people you work with is very important, and you don't want to take any risks in terms of them potentially losing their lives. Have you ever been in a situation where lives have been lost and you weren't able to secure their
No,
situation?
We are lucky, but nothing as severe as that happened. And I think that when you speak about security, the most important thing that we do is prevention. So our people do take a lot of risks, as one example that you saw, and there are many others. But before those people go to those places, so there is a whole procedure of how they go there, and they know what to do and how they learn what to do. So it's a deep security training and maintenance of that security from the first day that we start working together, into understanding. And again, as I said before, the people that go and work for us, I know and we know exactly where they are because of those things. So we need to know exactly where people are and where they are going and what they are supposed to film, for us to be surprised as less as possible by anything that might happen. So because of that, we didn't have any kind of severe incidents of anybody losing his life or something even close to that.
One more question before I ask the panelists what their plans are for the future. Yes, please. Yes, please.
Thanks. I have a question for you. My name is Laura. I'm a digital producer at Discovery Channel. You said that the footage that you give, there is no credit, so we don't know that it's your organization who gave it. Do you have an example of some things that you have shared with the media which has been released and made a big noise or made a significant change in?
Yeah. So there are many of those, but I cannot.
But if it has been released, like, I don't know.
I cannot.
Maybe at the beginning when.
I cannot reveal any kind of these details, because then it will be. So we are publishing all the time, including today. Things were published in the world media, but then we live in the Google era, so you just do your,
It's quite difficult.
The smallest details. The smallest details that I give, it will make very easy for everybody to find out. Sorry.
It's quite hard having that conversation with you. Yeah. Malachy, we've got a few minutes before we run 5 minutes over time. What's the future hold for Storyful? Why did Rupert Murdoch spend $25 million on your outfit? Can you because you had a little thing about that?
I wouldn't even dare try to speak on his behalf, but I think he's investing in the team that we have and the technology that we've built, the expertise that we've built, and just as any of our clients who do business with us, they want to own the start of a breaking news story, and that's really where we show value. I think they're also probably interested in the video aspect. I think for the News Corp entities that as with any news organisation, news and the delivery of news and video news in bite-sized nuggets is going to become more prevalent, and probably will define news gathering. Actually, I think if we think about how news will be delivered in the future, that kind of defines how we gather it. That's it. But we, as for Storyful, our plans. We remain independent, committed to independent journalism, to open collaborative journalism. Keep growing our team, our technology, our
Stay in Ireland.
Headquartered in Ireland. We've an office in New York and an office in Hong Kong as well, and journalists in other countries. But headquartered, the editorial and technology base stays in Ireland. Yeah.
Elliot, what are you going to be doing in the near future?
I'm going to be launching a new website where I'm going to bring together a lot of writers and bloggers who, like myself, use a lot of open source information to investigate various stories, not just Syria but other countries as well. And they'll also be part of that website where I'm talking about the techniques used. So a big focus, I'm known as, last year I've been known as the sort of Syrian weapons guy, but I want to be focused more on the way in which social media is being used. I'm involved with a tech project I can't give too many details on, but it will make working with video a lot more easier. And you look at Syria and there's probably about 500,000 videos that have been posted on YouTube from Syria, which is a vast amount of information. And I speak to a lot of NGOs, think tanks, media organisations, and they're just saying, how do we deal with this? And I'm hoping this year I'm going to help answer that question. And I'm doing various other things as well I can't go into, but I'm going to be very busy.
Yeah. And Google is part of that.
They might be, yes.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. So, Tricia, what about the UGC hub?
Yeah, I think in many ways the sort of, I don't know for sure, but I would imagine that over the next couple of years the way the team is set up will probably change a little bit in terms of I think the days when the BBC would effectively just outsource anything on Twitter or YouTube to my team thankfully is over, where so much of the work we used to do is now just a normal part of every journalist's job in the newsroom. So I think we'll continue to try and spot new technology, new services. I think one of the great advantages that we've experienced over the past year is as a news division, we've all finally moved into one building in New Broadcasting House, and that's provided lots of benefits in terms of collaborative working across all our different sort of language services and different news programs and different parts of the newsroom. We haven't still quite figured out the optimum way of working really closely in collaboration together yet, and I think that's something that we'll really try and strive and develop over the next 2-3 years. And just in terms of a personal thing, over the next 3 months last week I think I just started on a project which is specifically looking at chat apps, which again is a sort of a pet interest of mine. So I'm talking about things like WhatsApp and Viber and WeChat and Kik and other chat apps that you may not have heard of. And the reason why they're so interesting to me is that they are exploding in terms of use by users. It's quite likely that WeChat, which may well be an app that many of you may not have heard of, but by the end of this year will have more users on it than Facebook does. And just to give you a sense of where audiences are moving towards in terms of moving away from the more conventional social media sites to these more instant apps and that are lighter and easier to use, and they're all closed systems at the moment, so we have no way of getting into them, a bit like the BlackBerry Messenger problem that we used to have. So I want to spend a bit of time figuring out what we do about them.
Right. It's WeChat.
WeChat is one of them, yeah.
Okay. And Greg, what about Videri and you? How long are you going to last doing this mad job that you do?
Probably not forever, but I hope to not end in a bad way. So I'm with Videra, and till my amazing wife and family, they are still coping with it. And in terms of where Videra goes, so there is a lot of need for us all over the world, and I know that when we speak about Videra, so immediately people have pictures of all the, let's call the bad places of the world, but even in the world that we live in, there is a lot of need for what we do. So we intend of expanding to many more places, to develop new technologies, to build more bridges between worlds, as we do between journalists and citizen journalists, or lawyers and citizen journalists, and to continue doing good.
Good for you. I want to acknowledge everyone in the audience who's contributed with your questions and your thoughts. I want to thank Millicent from Frontline Club, Will for running the tech, and most of all, I'm sure you'll want to join with me in thanking all of these people who are making a difference in the world of news gathering.